Evan looked at the duplicate imposter, his mind seeking an explanation as to just why there appeared to be another version of himself standing in his garage, and what this particular personification wanted of him. Chapter 7. An even more peculiar manifestation. Faye began to explain the terms and conditions of the contract for their new journey. Quite simply, we need to reprogram your thought patterns from the moment they began being self-destructive. Faye looked at Evan for the reaction which he was hoping to see, rather than the blank expression. There he was, inquisitiveness combined with the willingness to cast aside uncertainty and judgment. When? At what point in my life did I supposedly start being self-destructive? A long time ago, way back in your past, Fate informed him, as he tried to prepare him for the events of the journey that lay ahead. Do you remember the very first time that you broke the law and got caught? Evan rummaged around in his memories for what should have been an easy-to-answer, straightforward question. The memory refused to make itself apparent, and then seeing no other option, he then confided in Fate about the random order that his thoughts and memories sometimes adopted. Parts of my past I seem to remember vividly, and then on other days my memories seem to change. They get mixed up, as though they suffer from... He paused, trying to find the right way to articulate what he was trying to explain. I don't know, memory amnesia, or dyslexia, or something, as though one day came after another day, which I previously felt sure had occurred in a different order in my life. Then sometimes I have memories of walking, of being in strange places, with really weird people, doing all sorts of odd things. Though I suspect they are just dreams that I had as a child. And then other times... Evan stopped explaining as he noticed that Fate was smiling. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I'm smiling because I understand why your memories are so ambiguous and inconsistent. There will, however, no longer be a lack of clarity after tonight, as everything will become clear and the cause of your confusion will become evident. Evan's curiosity looked at Fate, wondering how he could know such things, such intimacies, having just met one another. And then, of course, he realised that this was not the case, and that if this entity was his Fate, then he had always been a part of Evan's existence. Having decided that he was ready to walk the walk along this journey which Fate had talked about, Evan moved the conversation along and asked, What do I have to do now in order to, what was it they said I had to do? Reprogram the way that I think. Fate knew that he was asking a lot of Evan to give himself over to what was, for him, a new and unknown entity. He tried to prepare Evan for what lay ahead. He warned him that where they were going, there was no room for pessimism. You must believe in me implicitly, and from this moment you must give yourself over to me without question. You must give me your total trust. You must leave your pessimism behind you, here in the garage, as the unwelcome destructive force that it is. Are you sincerely ready to do that? Yes, I am, and yes, I will, was Evan's reply, filled with so much enthusiasm that he never even noticed that Fate had referred to pessimism as a pronoun. I am ready, he reiterated, with an abundance of enthusiasm. He did not, however, realize what he was agreeing to and what it was that he was supposed to be ready for. How could he? How could he possibly have anticipated what was about to occur, even with all the extreme events that he had seen so far? What with the appearance of Fate out of thin air, and the disappearing through the solid wall in the pub, and the once more materializing inside Evan's garage. what was about to occur would leave the previous events in the realm of just plain ordinary. So fate tried to prime Evan with a little more preparation. Are you sure you are ready? I mean, really ready? Yes, of course I am. You don't have to keep on asking me over and over. Fate then took hold of Evan by his sweatshirt and began frantically shaking him. Forward and backward, backward and forward, and then a change in direction and an increase in intensity. The frenzied attack was an appalling shock to Evan's system, shaking him with ever increasingly harder and faster intensity. Fate continued until Evan's world became a blur. He began to think of Fate as a demonic maniac who had come to extract some sort of terrible revenge upon him for an atrocious act that he must have committed in the long ago past, a deed which Fate had not, as yet, mentioned. Everyone was trying to yell at Fate to stop and to plead with him to let go, fearing that he may pass out, or worse, he may be shaken to death. The violent shaking, though, was preventing him from uttering a sound. He was beginning to feel as though throwing up was inevitable. Then, in the most incredulous occurrence that Evan had been involved in throughout this unparalleled day, and now evening, another being, another entity, burst right out of his body and collided with the wall of the garage. Fate at last stopped shaking Evan, much to the gratitude of Evan's faculties and his sweatshirt. It took Evan a while to gather his senses back into some semblance of normality. Finally, with his previously blurred vision being able to focus its attention back on his surroundings again, he gawped incredulously at a facsimile of himself. With all the remarkable events that were becoming more outlandish than the previous ones, it was still astonishing to Evan that he was now being confronted by an even more peculiar manifestation than when he had first realized that he was keeping company with the entity he now knew as Fate. He stared at the representation, and then looked towards Fate for an explanation, and then back at the new entity, now standing in his garage, dusting himself off. Back to Fate his eyes travelled, still searching for some understanding of this new apparition. Fate offered none, as though giving Evan a chance to regain his equilibrium and maybe work things out for himself. He looked at the duplicate imposter, his mind seeking an explanation as to just why there appeared to be another version of himself standing in his garage, and what this particular personification wanted from him. So he asked a new self-representation, his voice quivering a little from the shaking he had received. Who are you? What is it that you want from me? But before the new arrival had a chance to speak, Fate informed him that it's Pessimism from inside you. I told you we would have to leave it here. I beg your pardon, demanded Pessimism, taking exception at being referred to as a mere pronoun. Anyway, where's they going, and why can't I come with them? Apparently, he had been listening to their conversation once it became apparent that it may be needed to shed some light on his version of what was best for Evan. We are going on a journey, and you're not welcome, Fate told him sternly. We're going to reprogram my thought patterns, Evan chipped in, while continuing to look at Pessimism, thinking how much he looked like a cynical version of himself. He was taken aback with the newfound authority that he had responded with, surprised at how unusually optimistic he was feeling. Nay, lad, nay. What a waste of their time. Seriously, reprogram the way somebody thinks, he sneered, though struggling with the thought that his vessel of negativity may be breaking free from his world of condemnation. What are you, some kind of computer? Reprogram the thought patterns, indeed. Whatever next, reboot yourself before you set off. Pessimism was constantly checking out his two adversaries, while he continued his pessimistic remarks, trying to see which one may be showing a sign of weakness. It's a well-known fact that they can't change somebody's basic personality once they've passed a certain age. Neither fate nor heaven appeared to be yielding to his negativity. Pessimism was now getting the distinct feeling that his efforts were being wasted on two ridiculous fools, and that his chance to keep a hold upon Evan's attitude towards life was beginning to slip away. Nonetheless, he continued with his cynical remarks. "Remember this," he prompted, trying to quote some philosophical reasoning that he had once read somewhere. "Give me a lad till he's 7, and I will give you back the man." Thus proving, reasoned Pessimism, that any hope of changing somebody's attitude and approach towards life after they've aged beyond 7 is absolutely futile. Pessimism's hopes of changing Evan's attitude was the undertaking which was proving to be futile, so an attempt at reverse psychology became Pessimism's next approach. "I have to be honest with you, my mate. I like you just the way you are, and I would not change one thing about you. So, why on earth would they take any notice of somebody that only just met, who doesn't appear to like anything about her, who doesn't agree with the way they thinks, the way in which you behave, or the choices which you make?" Pessimism was using every mind game that he was usually extremely astute at manipulating Evan with. Yet somehow, tonight, he seemed incapable of turning things around. It was as though there was an attitude or a characteristic missing from Evan's usual persona. Pessimism's customary hold over Evan had been shaken loose by fate, which had unshackled Evan's potential, had been held prisoner for all of Evan's adult life by Pessimism. The dejected entity was beginning to realise that the relationship where he owned Evan was now coming to an end. He was redundant. Evan confirmed the demise of their association when he told Pessimism that, "I have nothing to lose. I can turn around and come back any time I want to. Fate and I made a deal, and I trust him." He then turned to Fate and asked, "What do I have to do now? What happens next?" "Come with me," Fate beckoned, through the darkness and into the light. Fate began walking, and Evan began following him towards the back of the garage, which seemed to be darker and oddly further away than Evan remembered it being. Tentatively, he stepped along the floor, taking care to lift his feet high enough so as not to trip over any discarded tools or black bin bags which were lying around waiting to be taken to the recycling centre on Tuesday. He was also keeping one arm held out in front of him to make sure he avoided any undesirable contact with the back wall of the garage. Evan was beginning to wonder if they would ever reach the elusive far wall. He further wondered just when it was that the long extension to his garage had been added, without planning permission or his knowledge. He gradually began to feel more confident about not tripping over anything as he remembered the words which Fate had spoken earlier. "You must trust in me and believe in me in order for this transformation to work out." And so he began keeping his feet closer to the floor as his confidence grew stronger, and his hand, which had been used as a guiding probe, was now lowered down by his side. All the time that they were walking, they could hear the voice of Pessimism still calling out to them. "Come back! Don't leave me here! I can show thee where thou's gone wrong. I'm good at that sort of thing. Come back! Come back!" he beseeched. But it was no use, for Fate carried on walking, while Evan continued to follow, whilst believing and trusting his new feelings of optimism and his newfound friend, Fate. They both walked away into the darkness, leaving Pessimism disgruntled and grumbling to himself, while swearing a vow of vengeance upon his betrayers, especially Evan, the vessel which he needed in order to spread the gospel, according to the book of Pessimism.